What's going on, guys? So my name is Kyle. I'm a mineral balancing practitioner and a detox coach. So part one, I talked about tools for the sensitive, drainage pathways, so on and so forth, mast cells. Now I want to talk about one of the main causes for mast cell activation syndrome and blocked drainage, even if we have properly done the work. And that is going to be parasites. Parasites are a lot more common on Earth than normal creatures, and that's the unfortunate reality. In fact, a lot of our evolution is based around trying to develop behaviors that keep us safe from acquiring parasitic infections. So detecting when things are dirty and nasty and smell weird, because likely they will give us parasites. And same thing even culturally, like how we associate with other people and those kind of behaviors. We have all these little things within our brain that help us detect what is the probability of catching some sort of infection. We know that once you get them, they can be hard to get rid of because they have all sorts of tricks up their sleeve for evading our immune system and for meshing themselves into even our psychology and the way our neurotransmitters are balanced and the way we think, feel, crave, and all of that. The important thing I want to hammer home is that parasites are not a third world issue only. They are a first world issue as well. And I'll give you some simple examples as to why. So every indigenous culture or many more well-rooted traditional cultures had an understanding of parasites. So in India, castor oil cleanses were very common. In the West, we had our turpentine and sugar cubes. We often will deworm dogs to extend their lifespan and deworm horses. And yet it's very easy for people who live in America and first world countries to think, hey, I don't have any parasites just because I don't see them, just because they're not obvious. When you approach deep healing work, even with just a good mineral balancing program, most people are going to see stuff come out of them. And that is just a crazy fact of this work. So I want to dive a little bit more into parasites and explain why terrain change is so important, which is mineral balancing and detox, why that is absolutely critical to balance the pathogen load within us, because we can't fully eradicate all parasites, but we can get rid of a lot of them and then find a balance with the ones that are left. Then I also want to share a little bit about when it might be relevant to explore an actual parasite cleanse. And spoiler alert, most of the time, it is not relevant until way later when a person is way better already. So let's dive into it. When I speak of parasites, there are many species. There are large ones, there are small ones, there are fungal parasites, the lyme spirochetes, the bacteria, the mycoplasma. Again, there's the roundworms, the tapeworms. So there's things that are visible and there are things that are not visible. And also, they are often not just in the gut. They can be all around the body. This is one of the reasons why the symptoms of them can be so varied. So we know they're an issue, and yet it's not about waging war against them. The first and most important thing we need to think about is terrain change. If we have toxic, dirty, depleted soil, we're gonna have the more competitive plants grow, like weeds. But if we have rich, lush, healthy soil, we're gonna have a wide variety of microbes that can help facilitate healthy crops. And so it is within us as well. We have an inner terrain and inner soil. And if it's very toxic and depleted, we tend to encourage more parasites and more pathogens. But if we do a good job on detox and mineral balancing, we will shift it more in a symbiotic favor. So what's interesting here is pollution and parasites go hand in hand. In fact, in biology, parasites are often referred to as pollution sinks. See, they are actually like little cleanup crew and can hyper concentrate lots of heavy metals, microplastics, chemicals, so on and so forth that are present in the environment and concentrate them into their tissues. In that respect, they're almost like the physical embodiment of toxins. In biology, a common way to assess how toxic different parts of the ocean is to actually count the parasites in whale poop. And consistently, you will find the more parasites you find in whale poop, the more toxic that part of the ocean is. Another example is that fish in polluted rivers, the more polluted the river or the more polluted the lake, the more parasites they have. And when you actually measure the levels of pollutants in the tissues of the fish versus the tissues of the parasites within the fish, you will often find that the parasites have a lot more heavy metals and all sorts of garbage within them than the actual fish. And so this brings up the question, are all parasites actually parasites? It seems that in our body's incredible intelligence, there is some parasites that are brought in almost to serve like an adaptive role, like a cleanup crew to help us deal with this insane toxin onslaught. And that right there is the main reason why most parasite cleanses fail. Because if you treat parasites always as the enemy and you try to kill them right off the bat, like many people naively do with all sorts of parasite cleanses that are available on the market, you will release all the garbage that's within them, and now you've set off a nuclear bomb of toxicity and redistribution, and that's when people have the crazy flare-ups, the crazy brain fog, the crazy mast cell flares, the crazy issues that come from parasite cleansing. I experienced that as well. I did parasite cleansing very naively without really understanding the importance of drainage, terrain change, mineral balancing, all that, and I made myself a lot worse, and I've heard a lot of people experience the same thing. And so when we want to eliminate them, we need to really focus again on terrain change first and foremost. There's a few specific examples here. When we're deficient in zinc and selenium, we can actually effectively disarm our cellular immunity. And so parasites tend to overgrow, for example, in the presence of a zinc deficient body. Zinc will help keep the parasites from attaching to the intestinal lining. And so when we increase our zinc levels over time, people do start dumping parasites. Also, some of the most prevalent toxins, one being aluminum, will actually supercharge the growth of different pathogens like Lyme. Now, although terrain change is very important, parasites still do steal a lot of our nutrients. You can see, for example, when you're looking at the parasites within a fish, you'll see, yes, 600% more lead or 500% more mercury, but you'll also see 600% more zinc and 800% more magnesium. So this leads me into my next point. Parasites can actually create mineral imbalances. See, when we take anything orally, we actually feed our intestinal parasites first, and that includes the B vitamins. That is how you get the people who can keep eating and still stay super skinny, malnourished, and still present low iron. They still present zinc and B6 deficiencies and all sorts of issues like that. The biotoxins from pathogens as well can stagnate our liver. When we stagnate our liver, we impact our nutrient absorption. Viruses, which is a sort of parasite, can deplete our selenium, and then that can create issues with glutathione production and general detox. Lyme, very common today, a lot more common than people realize, can actually trigger something called cryptopyrroluria, where people just excrete their minerals like crazy, their zinc, their B6, their chromium, their magnesium, so on and so forth. So even though we need to really remineralize a person and think about terrain change, it is still important to ask, is terrain change enough in some cases? Parasites, again, are super intelligent. They have very sophisticated ways to evade our immune system. They can really influence our neurotransmitter balance. They can change how much dopamine we produce, which can change our gut motility. They can slow down the gut motility so they can feed more. There's countless examples in terms of how parasites can actually impact our brains and our psychology. And so I often find, even with people who have been going the mineral approach for a long time, they still may present parasite symptoms. And that is when I like to think about how do we address them a little more directly. I'm going to caveat here by saying I do not think parasite cleansing should be approached by yourself ever. I think it should always be done under the guidance of a practitioner for many reasons. One is the die-off effects from them. No matter how good you are, you're still likely to have at least some sort of die-off, and that can impair your judgment, and then you can make mistakes. And the second thing is that often people don't need to do parasite cleansing just yet. That is a later stage thing. In fact, I like to think of it how when people are very sick, the mast cells, the minerals, the drainage stuff can take a person from very sick to good. But when you're stable, then it's often, I believe, the parasite work that can take you from great to excellent. Just because people don't understand how some of these smaller, for example, microscopic parasites can create a lot of subtle brain fog, a lot of subtle anxiety, and can actually just limit our overall brain capacity and energy, even if we are generally healthy already. And another thing to think about too, if the minerals you are giving in a mineral balancing program are also feeding the parasites, how much more quickly could you balance a person's mineral ratios if you eliminate some of the pathogens? The other big thing that they do, and this is what creates a lot of issues with sensitive people, is that they create a lot of histamine and a lot of mast cell activation. And sometimes the only way to fully resolve the mast cell issues is to eliminate a lot of the parasite burden. Another analogy you can think of it is, imagine you're tending to a garden. Even if you want to make the soil healthier, you still need to pull the weeds because they will compete for nutrients with all the other healthy microbes and healthy plants that you want there. So let's talk about practical applications of the stuff I've shared. I know I just threw a lot at you guys, but I want to ground it and share what I do in my practice and how this can fit in within a good healing framework. The first thing to consider is optimizing bile flow. Bile is a profound anti-parasitic in its own right. Bile is liquid gold because it carries so much toxins that were circulating before and our liver processed and conjugated them up all nice so you can excrete it. But again, bile is also a strong anti-parasitic, and it can kill a lot of stuff in the small intestine, pathogen overgrowths, and actual larger parasites. So because of that, people often find that when they take higher doses of GB3 or BioFlow Plus, that they can have parasite die-off and they can release stuff visually. This is a nice mild way to introduce yourself into this work, and it is a great thing to consider long-term because, again, the more you optimize BioFlow, the healthier of a small intestine microbiome you're generally going to have. Other things you can think about for improving BioFlow: coffee enemas, we know all about them. There's many ways to supercharge them, but I'm not going to touch on that here. I also like TUDCA. This is a bile acid that's present within ox bile, but it is well researched for all sorts of awesome things, from cognition support, mitochondrial support, inflammation support, but especially supporting bile. There's all sorts of great bitter herbs that are available to us. I absolutely love phosphatidylcholine. That is a phospholipid that is very important for bile production. So as a bonus, phosphatidylcholine as well can help support our cell membranes, which then allows our cells to breathe better, release toxins more easily, bring nutrients more easily. Two brands in phospholipids are going to be Quicksilver, and I also like Body Bio PC. Liver flushes are pretty awesome as well. It is like a supercharging of releasing all the bile and also the physical obstructions that can be in the gallbladder, which can prevent proper bile flow. I would recommend doing it under the guidance of a practitioner, but there's many simple ways to approach it, like the Global Healing Center Liver Flush Program. Very inexpensive, very accessible, and at the right time can really support a person's healing journey. Now, the next thing obviously we need to mention is minerals are huge in supporting a healthy terrain. So just a good mineral balancing program will cover those bases quite well. Again, improving the amount of zinc we have, our B6, our selenium, so on and so forth. Now, for detox specifically, every heavy metal and chemical and pesticide can contribute to dysbiosis and parasite overgrowth, but there are two in particular I really think are worth paying special attention to just because of how common they are. So if you've ever gotten a hair test before, chances are you've probably seen that you may have high aluminum. In my practice, I don't think I've ever seen a single person with low aluminum. Everyone seems to have high aluminum in their hair, and that is because of the geoengineering, unfortunately. Debate me on that if you like, but aluminum is in the rain, it's in the snow, it's in the soil. It's got to be coming from the sky, and most importantly, it's within people. Aluminum is a really nasty toxin for the brain and for the mitochondria, and it really creates a pathogen overgrowth. It can create a lot more symptomology with Lyme, unfortunately. So thinking about how we can reduce our aluminum burden up front can massively help reduce our pathogen load. So some of my favorite tools here, CalMag Fusion actually can do a pretty good job here if you take it at higher doses, just because there is a high quality silica in there. They were using BioSil before. I think they're using living silica now, which is fantastic as well. Research for supporting aluminum detoxification. Other things that are a little more precise, high silica water, so like volcanic water, like Volvic or Fiji. The high silica content can help actually bind to excess aluminum and help your body eliminate it. The simple reason why silica works so well for aluminum detox is in nature, aluminum is not found by itself. It's generally found in a complex with other minerals and especially silica. In fact, bentonite clay and zeolite is aluminum silicate. It is a cage-like structure that gets formed with aluminum. And the high quality zeolites are going to be the ones with very high levels of silica, which can help bind to excess aluminum. And the poor quality zeolites, poor quality bentonite clays, are going to be the ones with low silica and weak structures, which can create more aluminum toxicity. So, little tangent there, but important to note. So, high silica water is fantastic. Horsetail tincture is another one I really like. Just Herb Farm works well, and that can help. This is a high silica herb, so it can help aluminum excretion as well. The other one I want to talk about is glyphosate. So glyphosate or glyphosate, however you want to pronounce it, is the other probably most common toxin people have. There's some studies done where I think 90% of people's urine in America had high levels of glyphosate. I would reckon that extra 10% are the sickest people because they're not actually eliminating their glyphosate. They are a glyphosate poor eliminator. Glyphosate is a really nasty one for a lot of reasons. It destroys our microbiome and will destroy our bifidobacteria and destroy our lactobacteria, and will encourage the overgrowth of salmonella species and other ones that are very nasty and difficult to get rid of and will not respond to any antimicrobial you give it. So the other thing it does is it is actually a mineral chelator. See, not many people know that the way it actually kills weeds and kills the things that it's patented for is by stealing minerals away and effectively destroying cellular metabolism. That's what it does to us. It will steal away our zinc, it'll steal away our copper, it'll steal away our magnesium, and it can steal away our manganese and create imbalances there. So when we look at high manganese in a hair test, I often find that people with high manganese in a hair test that are not drinking well water will sometimes be in farmland, getting constantly exposed to glyphosate. And that glyphosate will create an imbalance with manganese where it's now accumulating into the tissues instead of going to where it needs to go. So we really want to think about how can we reduce glyphosate up front. There is actually a really good tool within mineral balancing already for glyphosate, and that is going to be trimethylglycine. Simply because glyphosate is a glycine molecule with a phosphate group attached to it. And what that means is that when we are creating proteins, glyphosate can insert itself into those proteins misfold, and now they are non-functional. It can be a big contributor to collagen issues and recurring injuries too, as well as a constant leaky gut. So trimethylglycine, by saturating the system in glycine, you are going to have a competition there, just like we have with zinc and cadmium and selenium and mercury. You're going to compete for parts of the body where glycine should go, and you're going to mobilize a lot of glyphosate. So the benefits too of trimethylglycine is that you get good methylation support, which can be relevant for a lot of people. If you are an overmethylator, you may want to think about just glycine by itself. It also works really well. The other thing that pairs really well here and is probably the best glyphosate binder we have is fulvic humic acids. So this is going to be the stuff that you find in your Shilajit. This is going to be the stuff you find in things like ion gut support, which I had mentioned in another video. And this is also going to be things you find in a lot of the Cellcore line. The carbon technology is fulvic humic acids. And as a result, it can play a big role in supporting the detox of glyphosate. When you do a good job of reducing glyphosate early on, you'll often find a lot of people's gut issues can go away, and people can actually regain their tolerance to many foods, especially gluten. So very important to think about early on. And also you'll reduce a lot of the excess pathogenic microbes in the gut, which eliminates the need for a lot of herbs and a lot of antiparasitics. Now, there's more I could say on detox. I talked a little bit about it in the other video, but functionally, I'll just say mineral balancing does a great job. Binders are fantastic here. I'll name a few very quickly. Pectisol is fantastic. Zeobind or Lava Vitae for people who are in Europe. I also really like Enteris gel. So these are all very safe, hyper-selective binders that can support detox quite easily simply by binding to what is floating around and helping the body eliminate it more easily. Now, let's go a little bit beyond the terrain change thing. So let's say a person has been doing the mineral stuff for a long time, they're doing great, but they're still having some recurring symptoms, right? A zinc imbalance that doesn't seem to ever go away. They keep showing low ferritin. They keep getting anal itching or a flaring of their symptoms around the full moon. They keep getting cravings. They keep having gut issues that don't seem to fully resolve. That is when we want to think about a good parasite cleanse. Now, the basic principle in approaching a good parasite cleanse is you want to go large to small. The simple reason as to why is because the larger parasites like the mucoid plaque, the ropeworm, or the roundworms will house a lot of the smaller ones like the mold, the fungi, the viruses, the spirochetes. And so when you get rid of the big ones, you can actually eliminate a kind of mothership of toxins and other pathogens as well. So as a result, the ones I most commonly use here are going to be things like Mimosa pudica. It's a fantastic gut scrubber, generally very well tolerated. I also really like freeze-dried garlic. When you freeze-dry garlic, you massively increase the allicin, which is the active antiparasitic within garlic. So your aged garlic you get from Amazon is not going to work for antiparasitic purposes, but freeze-dried garlic is some strong stuff. Bonus points too, you can actually put it in a coffee enema. Talk to your practitioner or doctor about it, of course, but it is a fantastic systemic antiparasitic. Funny enough, when my clients do that or when I've done that, they typically will taste the garlic in their mouth within a minute or two, because going through the other end, you get systemic absorption straight into the bloodstream. So makes it really good for parasites that are outside the gut. There's other good ones too. Ozonated oils can be really good. That is more of an advanced tool. And again, I would definitely only do it under the guidance of practitioners. The Cellcore Parakit can be useful for some people. Some people don't really feel much with it, but at the right time, some people can get some pretty good results. It is all going to be situational here. A tool I also really like is liposomal preparations of herbs. This is going to be more for the Lyme cases. I had some pretty nasty Lyme. It was causing a lot of distress, even when I had healed so much with mineral balancing and detox and all this stuff. It wasn't until I approached some of the liposomal preparations of herbs that I had some really life-changing impacts on my brain and my energy and the way I showed up in the world. So that's pretty much all I'm comfortable with sharing. Those are some of the safest and most accessible tools, I would say, for people. To wrap it all up, I would say focus on terrain, focus on detox and mineral balancing, because you will get rid of a lot of stuff just by doing that. And then if you still feel like there is a blockage or you haven't been able to get to the next level, then think about a good parasite cleanse done for a few months under the guidance of a practitioner. Sometimes that can create some really beautiful breakthroughs for people. So anyways, that's all I got for you. I hope this served you well. If you want to learn more about my work, check me out at jyotimineralbalancing.com or JyotiMB. I hope anyone who listens finds that next level in health that they're looking for. And yeah, take care.